For 3 years, the Axis powers seemed unstoppable. Nazi Germany controlled a quarter of the world's landmass. Imperial Japan dominated the Pacific. Italy held North Africa. Together, they commanded over 250 million people and the most advanced military technology on Earth. But then, in just 18 months, 3 battles changed everything. 3 moments when physics, intelligence, and sheer determination turned the tide of human history forever. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how Stalingrad, Midway, and D-Day didn't just defeat the Axis powers. They reshaped the entire world order for the next 80 years. This is the story of how the impossible became inevitable.
In the annals of human conflict, few chapters are as devastating and transformative as the Second World War.
December 1941. The world was watching in horror as the Axis machine rolled across continents with terrifying precision. In just 2 years, Nazi Germany had conquered Poland, Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, France, Yugoslavia, and Greece. The Wehrmacht stood at the gates of Moscow and Leningrad. German U-boats were sinking Allied ships faster than they could be built. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, Imperial Japan had delivered the most devastating surprise attack in naval history at Pearl Harbor. In 6 months, they captured the Philippines, Dutch East Indies, Singapore, and Burma. The rising sun flag flew from the Aleutian Islands to the edge of Australia. By summer 1942, the Axis controlled territory stretching from the Atlantic coast of France to the coral atolls of the Central Pacific. That's over 25 million square miles, larger than the entire North American continent. Hitler's Reich governed 250 million Europeans. Mussolini controlled the Mediterranean. Tojo's empire held 450 million Asians under Japanese rule. Together, they commanded the most powerful military forces ever assembled. The German war machine possessed the world's most advanced tanks, the deadly Messerschmitt fighters, and revolutionary rocket technology. Japanese Zero fighters dominated Pacific skies, while their carrier pilots were the most experienced naval aviators on Earth. Stalin's Soviet Union was bleeding out on the Eastern Front. Britain stood alone, enduring nightly bombing raids. America was still mobilizing its industrial might, but time was running out. By August 1942, German forces were just 120 miles from Moscow and advancing toward the oil fields of the Caucasus. Japanese submarines were shelling the California coast. The Axis victory seemed not just probable, but inevitable. Yet, within 18 months, this unstoppable force would be retreating on every front. How did 3 battles reverse the momentum of the greatest military alliance in history? The answer lies in the fatal mistakes made at Stalingrad, Midway, and Normandy. Summer 1942. Hitler made a decision that would doom his empire. Instead of focusing all German strength on capturing Moscow, he split his forces for Operation Blue, a massive drive toward the oil fields of the Caucasus. But there was a problem. A single city stood in the way: Stalingrad. Named after the Soviet dictator himself, Stalingrad was more than just a strategic target. It was a symbol. Hitler became obsessed with capturing it. Stalin refused to abandon it. 2 megalomaniacs were about to turn an industrial city into the graveyard of the German army. General Friedrich Paulus led the German 6th Army, 270,000 of the Wehrmacht's finest troops, supported by 700 tanks and 1,200 aircraft. They had conquered France in 6 weeks. Surely one Soviet city would fall in days. They were catastrophically wrong. Stalingrad wasn't like the open plains where German blitzkrieg tactics dominated. This was urban warfare, a completely different kind of hell. Every building became a fortress. Every room became a battlefield. Every street became a killing zone. Here's the physics betrayal that doomed the Germans. Tanks and aircraft, the backbone of German military superiority, became almost useless in dense urban combat. A single Soviet soldier with an anti-tank rifle could destroy a panzer worth 100,000 Reichsmarks from a bombed-out apartment window. General Vasily Chuikov, commander of the Soviet 62nd Army, understood this immediately. His order was simple, but devastating. Fight for every house, every floor, every room. Make the Germans pay in blood for every inch. The Russians turned Stalingrad into a maze of death. Snipers controlled entire city blocks. Booby traps waited in every basement. Hand-to-hand combat raged in factory halls where workers had been building tanks just weeks before. For months, German and Soviet forces fought over individual buildings. The grain elevator changed hands 17 times. The railway station was captured and recaptured 13 times in a single day. Soldiers measured progress not in miles, but in meters. By November 1942, the German 6th Army controlled 90% of Stalingrad, but they were exhausted, undersupplied, and scattered across miles of rubble. That's when Stalin sprung his trap. Operation Uranus. 1 million Soviet troops, 13,500 artillery pieces, and 900 tanks launched a massive pincer movement, not against Stalingrad itself, but against the weakly defended Romanian and Italian forces protecting the German flanks. Within 4 days, the entire German 6th Army was encircled. 270,000 elite German troops were trapped in a frozen pocket, cut off from supplies, reinforcements, and hope. Hermann Göring promised Hitler that the Luftwaffe could supply the pocket by air. They needed 500 tons of supplies daily. The German Air Force managed to deliver an average of 94 tons per day. Soldiers began eating their horses, then their leather boots, then anything they could find. Hitler forbade any breakout attempt. The 6th Army will hold its position to the last man, he declared. By February 1943, there were no men left to hold anything. The Battle of Stalingrad cost the Axis powers over 800,000 casualties, dead, wounded, and captured. The Soviets lost 1.1 million, but they could replace them. Germany could not. More devastating than the numbers was what Stalingrad represented. For 3 years, the German army had been seen as invincible. Now the world watched as an entire German army surrendered in the ruins of a Soviet city. The Eastern Front, which had been moving steadily toward Moscow, suddenly began moving west toward Berlin. The Wehrmacht would never again launch a major offensive operation. From Stalingrad forward, Germany was fighting a losing war of retreat. While the Germans bled at Stalingrad, another turning point was unfolding 6,000 miles away in the Pacific Ocean. But this battle would be won before the first shot was fired. In a basement in Hawaii. Pearl Harbor had been a devastating surprise attack, but Admiral Chester Nimitz was determined that the Americans would never be surprised again. Deep beneath the Pacific Fleet headquarters, a team of cryptanalysts worked around the clock to crack Japanese naval codes. The breakthrough came in May 1942. Lieutenant Commander Joseph Rochefort and his team cracked the Japanese JN-25 cipher. Suddenly, America could read Japan's most secret military communications like a morning newspaper. What they discovered was terrifying. Admiral Yamamoto was planning the largest naval operation in Japanese history, a massive attack on Midway Atoll, designed to lure the remaining American Pacific Fleet into a final, decisive battle. The Japanese plan was brilliant. 4 aircraft carriers would approach Midway from the northwest, supported by the most experienced naval pilots in the world. Meanwhile, a diversionary force would attack the Aleutian Islands, drawing American forces north. Japan was bringing 4 fleet carriers, 11 battleships, and 272 aircraft. America could muster just 3 carriers, and one of them, the Yorktown, was so badly damaged from the Battle of the Coral Sea that it should have been in dry dock for 3 months. Instead, 1,400 shipyard workers at Pearl Harbor performed a miracle, repairing Yorktown in just 72 hours. She would sail into battle with welders still working on her flight deck. June 4th, 1942, 4:30 a.m. The Japanese carrier strike force, led by the veteran Admiral Nagumo, began launching aircraft for the attack on Midway. At the same time, 240 miles northeast, Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher was launching American torpedo bombers and dive bombers from Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown. What happened next was one of the most dramatic reversals in military history. The American torpedo bombers attacked first, and it was a disaster. Flying obsolete TBD Devastators, they approached the Japanese carriers in slow, straight lines. Japanese Zero fighters and anti-aircraft fire massacred them. Of 41 torpedo bombers launched, only 6 returned. Not a single torpedo hit its target. But those doomed torpedo bomber crews had accomplished something crucial without knowing it. The Japanese Zeros had descended to sea level to destroy them, leaving the sky above completely undefended. 10:20 a.m., June 4th, 1942. Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey led 33 SBD Dauntless dive bombers into the clear blue sky above the Japanese fleet. Below them, 4 Japanese carriers were refueling and rearming aircraft, their flight decks crowded with planes, fuel lines, and ordnance. What happened in the next 5 minutes changed the course of the Pacific War. McCluskey's dive bombers screamed down from 17,000 feet at a 70-degree angle, reaching speeds of over 250 miles per hour. The Japanese carriers, caught completely by surprise, had no time to launch fighters or take evasive action. 10:22 a.m. Direct hits on the carrier Kaga. Aviation fuel exploded across the flight deck. 10:23 a.m. The carrier Akagi, Nagumo's flagship, took a bomb through her flight deck elevator. Secondary explosions began tearing the ship apart. 10:24 a.m. Soryu erupted in flames as dive bombers from Yorktown joined the attack. In 5 minutes, 3 of Japan's 4 aircraft carriers were burning hulks. The 4th, Hiryu, would be sunk by the afternoon, though not before her planes fatally damaged Yorktown. The mathematics of naval warfare had just shifted dramatically. Japan lost 4 fleet carriers, 322 aircraft, and most importantly, over 100 of their most experienced pilots, men who had been training since the 1932nd and were irreplaceable. America lost 1 carrier, 150 aircraft, and 307 men. But the numbers don't tell the complete story. At Midway, American industrial capacity and intelligence gathering had defeated Japanese tactical superiority and pilot experience. The United States had demonstrated that it could build ships faster than Japan could sink them, train pilots faster than Japan could shoot them down. After Midway, Japan never again launched a major offensive operation in the Pacific. The Rising Sun flag that had advanced across the Pacific for 6 months began its long retreat back toward Tokyo. The codebreakers in the basement at Pearl Harbor had given America its greatest naval victory. 5 minutes of dive bombing had avenged Pearl Harbor and changed the balance of power in the Pacific forever. By 1944, the Axis was crumbling on 2 fronts, but Hitler still controlled an impregnable barrier, the Atlantic Wall. 4 years of construction had turned the coast of Western Europe into the most heavily fortified position in human history. From Norway to Spain, 2,400 miles of coastline bristled with artillery batteries, machine gun nests, tank traps, and millions of mines. Field Marshal Rommel had personally overseen the placement of over 6 million obstacles designed to shred any invasion fleet before it reached the beaches. Breaking through this fortress would require the largest amphibious invasion in history. The challenge was staggering. Transport 150,000 men across the English Channel, land them on hostile beaches under enemy fire, and establish a foothold strong enough to begin the liberation of Europe. The man tasked with this impossible mission was General Dwight Eisenhower. His Operation Overlord required a level of logistics coordination that had never been attempted before. Consider the mathematics. 5,000 ships and landing craft, 11,000 aircraft, 150,000 troops, 20,000 vehicles, and 347,000 tons of supplies, all delivered to a specific stretch of Norman coastline within a few hours of each other. The industrial mobilization was mind-boggling. American factories were producing one Liberty ship every 42 days. British shipyards were building specialized landing craft at a rate of 100 per month. The Royal Air Force was flying 14,000 sorties in the weeks leading up to the invasion. But logistics alone wouldn't guarantee success. The Germans had to be deceived about where and when the attack would come. Enter Operation Fortitude, perhaps the most elaborate deception in military history. The Allies created an entire phantom army, complete with fake radio traffic, dummy tanks made of plywood and canvas, and false intelligence reports. They convinced the Germans that the main invasion would target the Pas de Calais, the narrowest part of the English Channel, 150 miles northeast of the actual landing sites. To make the deception credible, they assigned General George Patton, the Germans' most feared Allied commander, to lead this fictional 1st U.S. Army Group. German reconnaissance flights photographed massive tank formations and supply depots that were actually inflatable decoys. The deception worked perfectly. When the real invasion began, Hitler kept 19 divisions at Calais, waiting for an attack that would never come. June 6, 1944, 6:30 a.m. The largest armada in history approached the beaches of Normandy through rough seas and low clouds. What happened next would determine whether Europe remained under Nazi control or began its journey back to freedom. The landings were not the clean, coordinated assault that had been planned. At Omaha Beach, American forces faced a killing field of machine gun fire and artillery. The first waves of troops suffered 90% casualties. Bodies floated in the surf as German defenders poured fire down from the cliffs. But here's where American industrial might and tactical innovation made the difference. Unlike previous amphibious assaults, D-Day brought massive naval gunfire support. The battleships Texas and Arkansas, along with dozens of destroyers, moved dangerously close to shore to blast German positions. Even more revolutionary were the Mulberry Harbors, prefabricated artificial ports that the Allies towed across the English Channel. Within days of the landing, these floating harbors were unloading more cargo than the port of New York. By noon on June 6th, Allied forces had established footholds on all 5 landing beaches. The Atlantic Wall, supposedly impregnable, had been breached in a single morning. The German response revealed how effective the deception had been. Field Marshal Rundstedt requested permission to move armored reserves to Normandy, but Hitler refused. The Führer remained convinced that Normandy was a diversion and the real attack would come at Calais. By the time German reinforcements finally arrived, it was too late. Allied forces were already pushing inland, supported by a continuous stream of men and supplies flowing through the Mulberry Harbors. Within 6 weeks, over 1 million Allied troops were fighting in France. Paris fell on August 25th. By September, Allied forces were crossing the German border. D-Day succeeded because it combined 3 elements: overwhelming industrial capacity, innovative technology, and brilliant deception. The Allies didn't just outfight the Germans. They outproduced them, out-innovated them, and outsmarted them. The fortress of Europe, built to last 1,000 years, crumbled in less than a year. Hitler's empire, which had seemed unstoppable in 1942, was now being crushed between advancing armies from east and west. The third turning point was complete. The road to Berlin was open.
Turning the tide against all odds.
These 3 battles didn't just change World War II. They reshaped the entire world order for the next 80 years. Stalingrad broke the myth of German invincibility. After February 1943, the Wehrmacht never again launched a major offensive. The Eastern Front, which had advanced steadily toward Moscow for 2 years, suddenly began its long retreat toward Berlin. The Red Army that emerged from the ruins of Stalingrad would not stop until Soviet tanks rolled through the streets of the German capital. Midway shifted the balance of naval power in the Pacific forever. Japan's elite carrier pilots, trained for over a decade, were gone. America's industrial machine, now fully mobilized, began producing aircraft carriers at a rate of one every 3 months. The island-hopping campaign that followed Midway would carry American forces 3,000 miles across the Pacific, from Guadalcanal to the beaches of Japan itself. D-Day opened the Western Front and guaranteed Germany's defeat. With Allied armies advancing from France while Soviet forces pushed from Poland, the Third Reich was caught in an inescapable vice. The fortress that was supposed to last 1,000 years crumbled in 11 months. But the legacy goes far deeper than military victory. These battles established the United States and Soviet Union as the world's superpowers. The atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima was built by the same industrial capacity that won at Midway. The Cold War began when American and Soviet forces met at the Elbe River, dividing the Germany they had conquered together. The technologies developed for these campaigns, radar, jet engines, computers, rocket technology, would define the next century of human progress. The organizational skills that coordinated D-Day would later manage the Marshall Plan and the Apollo program. Most importantly, these 3 battles proved that free societies could outfight, outproduce, and outthink totalitarian regimes when survival was at stake. The democratic nations that seemed weak and divided in 1939 had demonstrated they possessed a hidden strength that no dictator could match. Stalingrad, Midway, and D-Day were more than military victories. They were the moments when the future of human civilization hung in the balance, and courage, innovation, and sacrifice tipped the scales toward freedom. The Axis powers had conquered continents, but they could not conquer the human spirit.
There was a glimmer
in 3
of
battles,
hope.
across 2 years, the impossible became inevitable, and that changed everything.